So I got a new toy for the laser and I'm pretty excited about this one. Not too long after getting the laser itself, I was thinking about getting a rotary attachment as well, and it's one of the exact reasons why I made the laser enclosure with a motorized bed, so that you can use something like that in it. But anyway, let's get this unpacked, see what I can do. The rotary was well packaged and arrived without any obvious damage. Inside the box, everything was packed into these protective black foam inserts, and I actually capped the insert and I use it to store all the accessories. Black anodized finish on everything is really nice. The rotary unit has some nice weight to it and has a real quality feel about it. So this is a new release rotary attachment tool from Sculpfin. It's their RA Pro Max and it's a 4-in-1 tool. That being, you've got your roller bed here as normal, but you've also got the chuck attachment, and the chuck can be configured in 3 different ways. So they give you plenty of accessories for that. They've got the L brackets here that just screw onto the solid brass jaws of the chuck, and they just screw on with supplied screws. They're probably for bigger holding, like a bottle or a mug or something. You've got these stepped brackets. They're just a different option for holding, maybe a smaller item, something more delicate. You've got these hex pins that screw into the brass jaws, and with 3 of those in place, you can hold round objects, and that would typically be used in conjunction with the tailstock. Tailstock can also be used for heavier items as well. That just unscrews out there. You've also got this 2-wheel support bracket. Now that's for longer items, so you just position that where you need it. It's height adjustable, and these rollers can be adjusted in and out. So plenty of options there. You can use the rotary tool as it is for both putting things on the roller and also putting things in the chuck. But if you want a little bit more room for larger diameter items, you can take the rollers out. And you need to take the rollers out anyway to use the other awesome feature of this rotary attachment, and that's this tilting motor head. This motor head can tilt 180 degrees. It's just held in with thumb screws through the base, so you don't need any special tools. And we can just undo those. And those rollers should just pull out of the roller drive head, like that, and like that. Just as it is there, you can use with the chuck. You don't need to remove this part here, but if you want to rotate the motor head, you do need to remove this part. And that's, again, pretty easily done. Just undo these screws. And that just pulls straight out. And that's what it looks like on the back. Now we can rotate this, undo that locking knob, and it basically just rotates 180 degrees. So plenty of flexibility there, plenty of options. And to put it all back together again, it's pretty simple. Just slide that back in, make sure you feel it locking in. Put the screws back in place. And then reattach the rollers. The spindle on the end of the roller has a flat on it, so it just keys into here. So just feel for that when you're putting it back in place. I've done this a couple of times. It can get a little tricky, but it is a precision fit, so it's good to know that it fits in nice and tight. Do the same for this one. Just feel for that. Lock that in, and then you just screw the screws in from underneath and you're ready to go. The manual's not too bad. It's full colour. It's got plenty of coloured pictures. Very self-explanatory. Lots of pictures of how to set up and how to use it. It's a bit light on written instructions, but most of this looks very self-explanatory. Probably the only difficult part, if any, is the Lightburn setup, getting it set up in Lightburn, but the manual does give you all the settings that you need to set it up in Lightburn. Haven't done that yet, so let's see how well they work. Next step is to get it in place on the laser, connect it up with the supplied cable, do the Lightburn settings, and hopefully everything just runs very smoothly. Well, let me just say that did not go as smoothly as I'd hoped. Let me show you what happened on my first experience with the rotary. So here's most of my first attempts at using the rotary. As you can see, this bottle is covered. But that's okay, it was a test bottle. That's why it says test. And yes, I got that backwards, but that's fine, that's an easy fix. But if you look at the bottom of those letters, they're all cut off. That's the beginning of the burn. The burn went from this side to that side. And here's another example. It's cut the front off there. All of these. I did my logo, and the logo is misaligned quite badly. The U doesn't line up. Those lines are meant to be together. Let's jump into the setup of the rotary so we can see what the issue was. So as I said before, the manual's very light on words. It's all pictures. So you turn to the right page. It says light burn settings, so you think, no worries, I'm on the right page. It does say roller mode here. Didn't take much notice of that because obviously looking at the picture, I can tell it's roller mode. And then you follow the steps. It tells you to go into laser tools, rotary setup. You click roller, click enable the roller, and then you enter in these dimensions. Seems pretty straightforward, which is what I did. All good. Then you go to the next page and this is chuck mode. But again, didn't really take much notice of that because obviously I can see it's chuck mode. And then follow the instructions. You click on chuck. Click enable rotary, and even gives you the dimensions to type in. Turn the page, and then it talks about clicking into machine settings, and this particular setting right here, it tells you to change it from false to true. So at this point in time, I haven't realized that this setting is only for the chuck, not for the roller. Again, the wording, please record the default value before modification as, and that's the end of the sentence. All the rest are in a different language, so that's no help at all. The only real indication that this is a continuation from here is because the steps are numbered. So it goes from 1, 2, 3. So you can follow the numbers, and this one's 7. And then it goes to 8, 9, 10, 11, so on. Again, at the time, I'm not really taking much notice of that, but hey, in hindsight, everything is 2020 now. If you go to the roller mode, it only goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And they're the only steps you need to do for a roller. So I was using the rotary attachment, testing it out with these settings for about 2 days, and I'm getting this really strange result with the roller only, where it was cutting off the front of the run. And what made it click in my head, when you look at the instructions for what to do when you're finished using the rotary, on this page it has roller mode, and all you need to do is disable the rotary, and that's it. But then in chuck mode, you need to disable the rotary and return this machine setting back to what it was. And it was at that point in time where it just clicked that this setting only refers to chuck mode and not roller mode. But then afterwards I thought, well, it's not entirely my fault. To be honest, I think the instructions could be a bit clearer. I know all of you are very smart people, and you probably would have worked out those instructions, but I didn't, not at first anyway. And I don't think I'm a dummy, so I'm sure many other people would do the same thing as well. So I'm happy to be your guinea pig. If you've watched this video, then it won't happen to you. All right, now that we've got it all sorted out, let's jump in and have some fun. Connecting the rotary is fairly straightforward. The leads are labelled and colour-coded. Join the two blue plugs together, and the end labelled A motor is connected to the attachment motor. The rotary essentially becomes the Y-axis of your machine, so you disconnect the Y-axis lead from your laser and connect it to the end of the lead labelled Y motor. Before you even start using the rotary, it's a good idea to change these two settings. Click on Edit in the top menu bar and scroll down to Device Settings. You can also access this window by clicking this icon here. Now you want to turn off Auto Home on startup because the rotary doesn't have limit switches, and it's not really necessary because the next change you should make is in the laser section. Set the start from position to current position. If you leave Auto Home on, the laser could crash into the rotary while travelling along the X-axis, or the rotary could spin endlessly looking for home. Okay, let's start with roller mode first and set up for engraving. You can access the rotary setup window by going to Laser Tools in the top menu and clicking Rotary Setup, or you can use the shortcut keys Shift Command R or Shift Control R, or by clicking this icon here near the top right corner. We want to make sure roller is selected and enable rotary is switched on. Now, depending on your setup, you may have to switch on mirror output as well. You should always do a test run. I did one here and the image was reversed, so I needed to switch it on. The next two values are provided in the manual and they're a good starting point, but you should confirm them. I used a set of verniers to measure the roller diameter and confirm that measurement. For the millimeters per rotation, the manual stated 40.5, but mine tested at 40.65. An easy way to test that is to use a round object with a consistent shape and either measure the diameter with verniers or the circumference with the supplied flexible tape. If you measured the diameter, you can use this handy calculator in the rotary setup window to get the circumference. Copy that circumference value and in Lightburn, draw a simple rectangle using the circumference as the height. The width isn't important, it just needs to be wide enough so you can compare the two ends of the rectangle when it wraps around your test piece. The rotary needs to be in line with the x-axis gantry, and you can do that by eye, by just looking down from the top, or you can use a square. You should check and readjust this position every time you use the rotary. Then just engrave the rectangle onto your test piece and see if the ends match up. You can see here that at 40.5 as stated in the manual, the two ends don't quite meet. They should be just touching. If it's short, just add to the millimeters per rotation and run it again. If they overlap, then subtract a little from that number. Do this until your lines just touch, as you can see in this shot. Once you have that measurement dialed in, you should never have to change it. With those two values set, you're ready to go. Another thing to take note of is that you will have to rotate your design 90 degrees, either left or right in Lightburn, so that it's laid out correctly around your item. Time to put all that in action and engrave my logo onto this torch, which is black anodized aluminium. If you have an item that's odd shaped or too long for the rollers, this is where the two-wheeled support bracket comes into play. It sits under the end of the item to support it. The bracket is height adjustable, and you can see here the lowest setting still wasn't low enough, but that's easily fixed because the spacing of the rollers is also adjustable. By moving them further apart, I was able to support the end of the torch. And of course you need to raise your laser machine, or in my case lower the bed, to maintain the proper focus distance from the top surface of your item. And that's what the supplied riser brackets are for. Or you can just prop it up on something, but make sure it's stable. Well, that turned out okay. The logo is in the correct orientation and it's burnt through the black nicely. However, you can see the angled edges of the letters are a bit jagged, but there's another setting we can change to fix that. Here's another example of the jagged edges on the text. So what I did to improve that was to go into the Cuts and Layers tab and change this interval value to a smaller number, which gives a finer engrave. You can also access more options by double-clicking the layer up here. You can change the line interval value here or here. And here is the result. That text has turned out much better. Next, I tried this long, thin glass bottle that's been sitting around unused for years. I wasn't sure how it was going to engrave because it is coloured, but it's not totally opaque. You can see that the glass is heavily tinted but not a solid colour, and there's a bit of fracturing in the engraving, so I probably had the power set too high. It's all good though. I said this is all experimental and it just shows another use for the roller. And I managed to get the text orientation correct. Here's another example of using the roller with the two-wheeled support bracket. I'm not actually going to engrave this wine glass, but just use it as a demonstration, because if my wife and daughter knew I had this glass out in the workshop, I wouldn't still be alive to finish this video. If you need to engrave very small diameter items, the rollers can be configured closer together by moving one into the center position. Another great result. I think I'm getting the hang of this rotary caper. So I've got the roller all sorted out. I'm really happy with how that's going and the settings that I've managed to work out. So I think now we'll change over to chuck mode and let's see what random stuff I can find to engrave. Now I do want to say one thing, this video is not about how to engrave or what settings you should use, because I'm doing all this stuff for the very first time myself, so everything's an experiment. But anyway, let's have some more fun. To use the rotary in chuck mode, to be able to use the 180 degree rotating feature, you need to remove the rollers and the roller drive head, which is easy to do with these 4 thumb screws. In Lightburn, I'm going to click on Edit in the top toolbar and choose Machine Settings and Output Setup. And this warning about changing machine settings will pop up. I'll click Yes, and then change this setting from false to true. And then make sure to click Right before OK, otherwise the settings won't be saved. First item for the chuck is this standard sized mug with a handle that someone kindly gifted to me. See, I'm not the only one who gets things backwards. Thanks, Chris. Now this is where a rotary chuck is ideal and opens up so many more options. A handled mug won't work on the rollers, and I was surprised and impressed by the clearance of the Sculpin rotary because I watched a few reviews of competitors' rotaries and they weren't able to accommodate a mug with a handle in this configuration because the handle would hit on the base, so the head had to be rotated 180 degrees. Speaking of which, if you do need more clearance for a larger item, then the head can be rotated. You will need to weigh down the base though, because the weight is no longer over the base. And if you need even more clearance, you can prop up the whole rotary. Now you will have to raise your laser machine as well to maintain focus, or lower your laser's motorized bed. If you haven't seen the video showing how I made this enclosure, there will be a link at the end and down below. When using chuck mode, you do have to enter in either the diameter or circumference of each item you're engraving. It's important to remember this because it's different to roller mode. So in the rotary setup window, make sure chuck is selected, and again do test runs to find out if you need mirror on or off. Then in millimeters per rotation, enter in the number stated in the manual, which is 160 millimeters for this rotary. And I did do a confirmation test for that measurement and the result was perfect. Then enter either the diameter or circumference. You can put in either because Lightburn will do the calculation for you. And you're ready to go. Happy with that for a first attempt? Next, I thought I would make myself a new glue bottle, and this is another great feature of the rotary chuck that opens up more options for you. Engraving tapered items. It's important to get the engraving surface parallel to the laser gantry, and that's what the supplied level is for. For this engrave, I ran a fill layer and then a line layer, and the result was better than I expected. And then using a Sharpie to fill in the letters made the text look like it was embossed. Very happy with that. Time now to try out the 3 hex pins with the tailstock to engrave some round objects. But all I could find was this solid aluminium ball made up of layers and layers of compressed Easter egg wrappers. So we ate a lot of chocolate at Easter. Tell me you didn't. Yeah, I thought so. That's probably not a great result, but again, it shows the many options that a rotary chuck opens up for you. What else can I find that's round? Well, that turned out great. I think I'm having too much fun testing out this rotary. The last thing I wanted to try with this setup is engraving rings. With the pins, you can grip the ring on the inside to engrave around the outside of the ring, or you can grip it around the outside to engrave on the inside face of the ring, which is what I did. Again, the rotating head allows you to do this. Well, that's not a bad result. The image is a little misaligned, but it shows you another example of what you can do with the rotary chuck. Well, I have to say that I'm really happy with the rotary attachment. I'm glad I've got it. It's a lot of fun, so much versatility. For those of you that have had a roller attachment before, I can't recommend it highly enough. It just expands your options so much more. You can just do so much more with it. And for those of you who have never had a rotary attachment before like me, I recommend it as well because you can do so much with it and it's a lot of fun and the learning curve is not too bad. If you're someone who does this sort of work all the time, then it won't be a problem because you'll be in that mindset and you'll have the settings down pat. It's when you don't use it that often, you get it out every now and then, which is probably what I'll do. You really have to think about getting your settings right, make sure you don't miss something, maybe go back to the manual. But other than that, it's like anything else. You just got to use it to get better at it. Now, Sculpin did send me the rotary attachment for free, but it came with no obligation whatsoever. I'm just doing this because I think it's a great tool. I want to say thank you to Sculpin and I want to let you guys know about it because I think it opens up a whole new world of options for your laser engraving. So, do I recommend it? Yes, I do. Thanks again, Sculpin, and thanks for watching.